Guys, in this episode, Cody Barton, one of the greatest integrators in the world, we're going to go into a deep dive on how you can scale your business the right way. So stick around.
Hey, this is Bridger Pennington, Chris Nog,
Cody Hoffine,
Corey Geary,
Alex Casale,
Clay Rockwood,
Matt Porcaro,
Tanisha Spencer,
David Olds, Drew Hitchcock, and you're listening to the Investor Semester Podcast with Jeremy Davis.
Welcome to the Investor Semester Podcast, where the nation's best investors come to level up their game. I'm your host, Jeremy Davis, and whether you're locking up your very first deal or you're scaling with creative finance, I'm here to bring you the real conversations, the real strategies, and the exact playbook the top investors are using right now. Most of our listeners are already inside the private community, but if you're not there yet, just go to investorsemester.com to join. And now for the show. Cody Barton, personal friend of mine, great guy, is a real estate entrepreneur who started at 17. And I think he's like, what, you're 18 now? No, I'm just kidding. Started at 17 and has since built multiple businesses generating over $50 million in revenue. He now partners with and invests in service-based companies to scale them for the exit while managing rentals, private lending, and new acquisitions. If you guys don't know, on a side note, who Cody Barton is, Cody Barton goes way back with a influencer we know, a real estate guy out there named Pace Morby. And Cody was the other half to Pace. Cody was the integrator. He was the guy behind the scenes, mainly building out the systems when it came to their acquisition business, their wholesaling operation, businesses they've owned together, as well as Sub2 itself, the education community. So guys, let's welcome Cody Barton to the episode.
Hey, excited to be here, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
Love it, man. I know you cut your trip to Europe short just to be on this episode, so I really appreciate that. So why don't you just go back in time real quick, dude, and tell me, like, you know, from 17 years old, like, I want to hear about your entrepreneurial journey and where you started and kind of where you are now.
Yeah, so I'll try to do a long story short on it, but you know, my teenage years, hated school, thought it was dumb. I wanted to make money, and that's you know, I always was finding entrepreneurial things to do to make money as a teenager. And you know, when I was 17, so it was my senior year of high school, I got into network marketing, which is, you know, some people have lots of bad things to say about the industry. I had a great experience. You know, I found some really great mentors. You know, read all of Robert Kiyosaki's books. I'd went through tons of Zig Ziglar recordings, you know, John Maxwell, leadership. You know, I got mentored, you know, personally, you know, by Bob Proctor for a couple of years during that stint. So it's like, I got a very strong personal development background from 17 to 21, you know, grew a team in that, you know, to a couple thousand people that was, you know, doing about 4 million a year in revenue. And thought I was going to do that forever. At 21, company goes under, and that I thought would never be a possibility. But things happen, right? And so I was like, gosh, dang it. Now what do I do with my life? I'm 21. I mismanaged all the money that I was making, and you know, had to sell all the stuff, move back to my parents' house. And I was like, what the heck? Like, now what? Then I was like, well, in Robert Kiyosaki's books, people make money in real estate. So you know what? I want to flip houses. So I got my real estate license because I didn't know what to do to actually flip houses.
I didn't know you had your license. I never knew that. Okay,
yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So I got my real estate license because I wanted to learn how to flip. You know, spoiler alert for anyone doing that, you do not learn anything about investing in real estate, getting your license.
You know how many square feet are in an acre?
Yeah, or in a rod or whatever. Yeah, 43,000 square feet or whatever in an acre. But, you know, it was like just, you know, I got my license, did that for 2 years, grinded because I'm a grinder. I just like I'll do whatever it takes and whatever I need to do. And so, you know, relatively quickly, you know, got back to a 6-figure income when I was like 21 as an agent. And it was just, I mean, I was just outbounding. I was cold calling for sale by owners, expireds, you know, all that every day, Monday through Friday, open houses every weekend, because at 21, you do not have very many people in your sphere buying or selling homes. So I had to go and create all of the opportunities that I had there. And so 2 years of doing that, I had a small team. And then one day I was sitting there in the office that I had and I was like, what am I doing? I got into this to flip houses and wholesale, and all I'm doing is representing clients. And I hate this. I don't want to drive around and deal with that. And so basically just flipped the switch one day, went in, let my assistant go. It was one of the hardest fires. I still remember it to this day. She was crying, and that made me start crying because I was just like, I hate my life doing this, and I can't keep doing this. I need to make a change. And so got into wholesale and fix and flip, started, you know, basically text blasting before that was actually,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work as well anymore. And this is before it was like actually popular, when most people didn't know it existed. And you can get a contract for $2,000 doing
What was it, around
text.
like
And
2015, that era?
yeah, way back
Yeah.
when it was not, no one
You
knew, and
you could
there,
literally text, "Do you want a cash offer on your home?" And then someone could respond, "Yes." They didn't have to opt out.
and you could send 10,000 of those a day.
Right. But now, just so you guys know, if you're not actually SMSing now, because of AI filters and because of the carriers being really, really particular with your wording, you can no longer say like, "Hey, do you want to sell your house for cash?" It's things like, "Does thou domicile want to be released from your ownership?" Like, you sound so anyway, keep going, Cody. Sorry. Keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. So yeah, so long story short in that, was doing wholesale on my own, and then I had another mentor that, we did joint ventured on some flips that I got. I didn't have the capital to do the flips. I didn't know anything about construction, so was doing that. Was doing okay, was doing like 3-4 deals a month, which is respectable. It was me and a couple VAs, and then I'd have a couple flips going on with that other partner at a time, so it was doing okay. But I hated the sales part. I was like, man, like I freaking hate I just don't like sales. It's not my jam.
Mhm.
And so I, ended up, to the point that you said earlier, met this guy Pace, met him through Steve Trank's podcast, reached out to him. I was like, yo, like, I'll give you my leads. Just show me how you're closing these, at such a high level. And we started, just JVing deals. And I mean, within the first month, we had like 4 or 5 contracts together. And I was like, this is great. He's doing all the stuff I hate, and I could just do the stuff that I like. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. So that was kind of how that started. And, 6 months in of doing that, then we, officially became partners and just continued on from there. So that was kind of that piece. And fast forward, I'll just jump to today. Now, had over 10 million in real estate in Arizona, have been selling off some of that the last couple of years. Um, businesses, like you said, done over 50 million the last few years, and, focusing now more of my time on buying companies and buying, auxiliary companies that could go underneath the other companies that I have, to continue to grow them. And, so there's a lot in that gap between those times, but that's kind of fast
Sure,
forward
sure.
to today.
So Cody, I want to really talk about like what you're focused on today, but before I get there, there is one question that I have, and I bet you there's a lot of other people that ask the same question. When you and Pace had American Home Offers, right? That was
Yep.
the wholesale operation.
Yeah.
What brought you guys to start going down the educational space? Like for me, I've run a wholesale operation for years. I've done this for a long time. I've closed a lot of deals. Me becoming a mentor is really because, quite frankly, I enjoy educating. I love teaching people. I also love talking to sellers. And if I can start JVing with my students and do deals with my students, it's a lot better than having to educate my acquisition managers that I now teach them how to run a business on their own, and then they become my own competition. So for me, I'd rather elevate other people and elevate students to do that. But for you guys, I'm curious, was it the same effect? Was it the same reason? Everyone always says like, oh, if you're able to make a lot of money in wholesaling, why would you ever coach? I'm just curious, like what pivoted you guys in that direction? I know there was Josiah was involved, Jameel was involved. Like, what was the whole ecosystem to move towards building out Sub 2?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, Josiah and Pace, they came together on, creating Sub 2, and, Pace was just like, hey, I'm going to do this thing on my own, but, we're going to eventually do events, and I'd love to have you involved in those events. And, he wanted me to help make some of the content for the training for the areas that I just knew how to do the things in that he didn't. Right. And so that was kind of how that started. And I mean, and our wholesale and flip business, like we were doing good, it's like we weren't the biggest in the country by any means, like zero shot at that. But, we really focused on doing flips because that was where we could squeeze the most out of, the money that we were putting into the business, and, being able to do some burrs on those. So, at any given time, we typically were running about 15 to 18 different projects. So we'd have, it's like when people hear, they're like, oh, wow, that seems like a lot. It's like really not, because it's like you think about, okay, like on a monthly basis, we're wholesaling, and say on a normal month, like call it 8 to 10, is what we would kind of be getting deal wise. And then out of that, we'd wholesale the ones we didn't like. And then the ones that we did like, we would take down to either flip or do a burr with. And so, if you think about upwards of, let's call it 18, projects that could be going on at a time, it's like, well, it's really, call it 6 of those in escrow to close to buy. There's about 6 of those, give or take a little bit more, a little bit less, in construction. And then there's another 6 of those getting stabilized to either burr or to, that are listed on the market to sell. And so that was kind of like the flow that was, pretty much going at most of the time, during our bigger volume of, doing direct to seller marketing and all of that. And, a lot of the stuff that doesn't work as much today was, when we generated most of the business from, SMS and cold callers was how we primarily did that. And now like you said, the carriers don't, they're not as favorable with those methods.
Sure. Exactly. Okay. So sub 2 starts growing, right? I remember in the beginning, I was one of the early adopters, and it was less of a community at the time. It was more of just a coaching program, like video modules. Pace would go live once a week, and maybe have a daily dial, or maybe a student would do a Zoom or something like that. But it's changed a lot over the years. But what I am curious about is, how did it affect your acquisition business? Like, did you guys start to transition into, and I'm asking for my own personal needs, did you start to transition into doing deals with students and start moving away from direct to seller marketing and move more towards a JV model? And I also know at the time, Start Virtual, which was one of your, other businesses, a VA business, I think that really, really grew rapidly because of the student base. So like, what was that, I guess, the shifting of your business models with now incorporating the educational community? How did that start? What did that look like?
Yeah. So, all credit to Pace on how he built that community. He's created a cult following, right? So it's like he has a special talent there to do that. And, I think the transition over time, like, I think people, like, when they're like, oh, I'm going to do coaching because I'm going to get tons of deals from students, it's like, you don't really get that many good deals from the students. Like we primarily were doing deals in Arizona. We did some flips in Florida for a bit. But Arizona was our primary market. And it's like, let's say if we were doing 8 to 10 deals a month, let's call it 1 or 2 sometimes of those would be from a joint venture. Because honestly, like, a lot of the deals that students would bring were garbage, and it was just like sifting through garbage, and no shade to, students, right? It's just like, oh, they're just learning. They're like, they said yes, they would sell. And it's just like, yeah, they're asking 50,000 over what you needed at. they're like, well, they won't accept that low of a price. It's like, yeah, welcome to wholesale.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, and I totally get that. I mean, it's, I get text all the time from my students and going like, hey, this seller wants to sell. And it's so funny. Like, when you have experience in wholesale operation, you begin to see red flags immediately, right?
Yeah,
Like,
immediately.
like, okay, they bought the property 6 months ago. Okay. That's a giveaway. There's no equity, right? So it might be a sub 2 offer. If they came in with like a conventional loan down payment, maybe there's a play there, but like, there's a lot of really quick giveaways of like, okay, here in Utah, there's an area called South Jordan. More specifically, the subdivision is called Daybreak. It is basically, it's a whitewashed neighborhood where all the white Californians moved to Utah during COVID, and they blew up this really, I mean, it's a lake type community, really beautiful. But if I ever hear anybody say there's a property for sale there, I go, well, I know the HOA does not allow any midterm or short terms. Okay. I know that they probably are upside down on their equity because they probably bought at the height and then the market dipped a little bit. Like, there's a lot of giveaways to the markets we understand, but totally get that. Students are learning. Not every deal is an actual deal, but still, it's the opportunity to be able to help them grow and be able to get their first deal. So let's say 10% of the deals your acquisition business was doing was with students. But when it came to Start Virtual, your VA business, I feel like that that really blew up in a great direction. And like, it was almost like you fed it into the ecosystem of the students very successfully. Like, how was that integrated correctly?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say looking back, it wasn't done the way that I wish it was done. But and just knowing what I know now, like I'm not interested in lead gen businesses.
Sure.
Really just because regardless of how well you do or don't do, it's always your fault as the provider.
Yep.
It's like you provide leads, but then if the people don't know how to sell, it's like the leads suck is the automatic thing. And so, it was promoted well, really, grew the business well. But, when a couple years ago, when interest rates, doubled within a few months, that a lot of our client base, like we lost a third of our client base, and like the business at that time was doing about 7 million a year. And so it's like take a third off of that within a few months, just because people were like, well, I'm not going to be getting deals anymore at the prices I could pay because now interest rates are 6-7%. Flips don't make sense. A lot of the people that were doing burrs, they just stopped doing burrs. So it's just like a lot of our users couldn't make sense of deals in that market. And so, kind of during that time is when I, launched the bookkeeping side of that business, because I was a little bit nervous of being so, dependent on real estate investors. We had a lot of agents too as clients, but like that client base being susceptible so much to interest rates. And so, that was kind of a pivot that we started doing, thankfully that we did. But that was a gnarly time for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this relates closely to like what I also went through, that I also had a VA business, kind of
Mhm.
hiding behind the scenes behind you guys. You guys were the behemoths, just gobbling up everybody who needed a cold caller. And I'm like, oh, I'm here for the scraps. But no, like when the market shifted, when SMS became more difficult, cold calling
Bro,
became more
yeah,
difficult, I realized,
disaster for
and,
that type of
and then
business.
AI to complement the whole thing, AI comes into the play, and I go, I see the writing on the wall. I know where this is going to be going in the direction that it's taken. And so I decided to pivot away from the VA business, and I snatched my best VAs. They're on my team now, but like at one point we had a 100-person call center in Zambales, Philippines, like under one roof. And it was an operation that was doing great when real estate was awesome, 2020, 2021, and beginning of 2022. I didn't have to do anything. People would just come to us and say, "Yep,
Oh,
want
yeah,
to get a
it
cold
just
caller."
yeah, yeah,
Super
it
easy.
was easy because it's just like the cost per deal, the economics of that made sense, the market made sense of it, so it was like it was a no-brainer. It's
Yep.
just it's a different
Yeah.
place today.
So the market pivoted. We all saw that. We all made our shifts. And then for you, I know that, and this is where we're going to lead into like what you're doing today. For you, buying businesses was something that became sort of a passion. That and exotic cars, right? And so so why don't you just tell me a little bit about that? Like questions that I can ask you would be stuff like, what are the key things you look for before deciding to buy or partner with a business?
Yeah, so I think for me, because it's weird because people are like, "Oh, like I thought you were a real estate guy." I'm like, if anything in business, I'd rather be considered a business guy than like a specific niche. Because like I have businesses in different niches, and people are like, "Oh, well, like what about like why are you in that niche or that?" I'm like, I'm agnostic of industry. I'm on like I have things that I want to see in the types of businesses that I'm involved in now, and that's evolved over time. And so like even in real estate, I was doing real estate because again, I picked up the purple book again, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm like, well, okay, people made money in network marketing. Okay, Robert talks about real estate. I'm going to do real estate. So it's just like I was just looking for the thing that was going to create, good freedom and financial, independence in life, right? And so the business buying side of things, kind of came by mistake, really just out of, I didn't know what I didn't know. But, one of the first acquisitions that, I did was because I started doing private money loans, was I got introduced to a guy named Matthew, the plant guy, which,
Yeah.
from, hearing about him. But, he wanted a loan. I looked at his business and I'm like, if we give this guy a loan, we will not get any money back. So offered to just buy half the business, which we ended up doing. Nightmare deal for like a year and a half of my life, of fixing that business. Which one of my things that I tell people is never buy a business that needs to be fixed up. You can buy a good business for a fair price. Don't like in real estate, you want to get a good price on a piece of real estate.
Sure.
And in business buying, it's more about getting a fair price on a good business, because you make in multiple arbitrage of the profit when you go to sell. So it's better to get something that you can then just add juice to the profitability faster than having to fix something. And so, 2 years later, we've had Plant Guy, and the business is healthy, and it's doing good, and but out a year and a half of my life of fixing that deal was painful. And just, okay, the business might go under this month. Okay, it didn't. Great. Next month, business might go under. And it was really just the amount of capital expenditures that business required, and a lot of the things that the previous owner or the current partner there had signed up for, as far as leases and things. And so we've worked through a lot of that, and now it's a healthy business, making good money. A lot of it has to go back into the business and buying more inventory and things like that to keep scaling it. But that deal then kind of led to, like, I did like the process of, I didn't have to come up with the idea, because I don't really like going 0 to 1 in business. It's not my favorite thing to do. So then, fast forward into last year, bought a residential cleaning company called The Perfect Clean, which I have partners there. And, I still have Start Virtual, like you mentioned, mainly focus on bookkeeping services. And as of time of this recording, I'm buying a tax and bookkeeping firm here in Scottsdale, Arizona, that I'm closing on next week, that I'll put, together with Start Virtual. And so, as far as my thesis has evolved over time. So, because sometimes people are like, I tell them my thesis and they're like, well, what the heck? Plant Guy didn't fit that. I'm like, yeah, because I learned after doing it. And so, like, it evolves. And it's like, just like in real estate, like, you do some deals and you're like, I'm not going to do a deal like that, because that sucked.
Right.
And I don't want that to think like, oh, the Plant Guy sucks, like that business. It's like, it's a good business now, but it's like the pain and suffering that I had to go through, I don't want to do that again. So I won't do that again.
I want to real quickly, to the listeners that don't know what or who the Plant Guy is, before they start thinking it's a pot sales company. Explain what that is real quick. I don't want to go into great detail, but I'm actually curious about what the business model for that is. It's like designer shrubs, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, that's client base, hotels, condo communities, museums, high-end restaurants. Like, think of the Mastros of the world, think of the Dominic Steakhouse. Like, those aren't actually clients of ours, but like, just for people to understand, like, it's only high-end. Like, it's
right.
Wherever the 1% hang out or live is what our client base is, basically, for that on the commercial side. And then, builders that are building $20 million homes on the beach in South, Florida, like, those are our clients. It's the high-end clients like that. And it was all project based when we came into the business, and people can check out the Plant Guy on Instagram. But, then last year, about a year into it, I wanted to launch an e-commerce side of the business, so we can create more consistency of sales on, like, a daily basis, selling nationwide online. And so we also sell online on theplantguy.com as well now.
Cool. Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to get a little skeptical here for a second. And whenever I think about new real estate investors, some of them are, they come into this scene and they go, okay, I tried wholesaling. It's hard. Now I want to buy a business. But that person has no idea how to run a business. They don't know what a P&L is. They barely even, like, they quit their pizza delivery job 2 weeks ago, and now they think they're going to become a business owner. I want to know, like, I would love to know, as a real estate investor, how can they look at their business more as a business owner than just, a wholesaler? But more specifically, where do you think that anybody can be a business owner if they buy a business? Or do you think that it's almost a recipe for disaster, putting someone who has no idea how to run a business together with a business that maybe it's actually a successfully running business, but would a bad business owner tear down a good business, and vice versa? Would a good business owner bring up a bad business?
Yeah, I'm going to hit the second question first, because I can answer it fast. A good business owner can fix a bad business. I do it. I've done it. And it's like, it's not fun, and I don't recommend it. So don't do that. Like, that's a dumb thing to do. So just don't do it. And yes, I made the mistake. That's why I'm saying it's dumb. Don't do it. As far as the, good business or bad business owner tearing down a good business, that absolutely happens. I've had people come to me that have bought companies that have never ran a company before, and they've just jacked these things up, and they're like, I don't know what to do to fix it. And I'm like, you made a bunch of stupid decisions that have kind of meddled with this thing. And it's like, these businesses that have been successful for a lot of years, It's like one of the first things that, I tell my team when we're going into deals, like, do no harm. Like, let's not try to change everything overnight because we don't want to harm what's already there. We want to strategically make decisions over time to make it better and improve things, but we do not want to harm what exists. We're buying cash flow, so we do not want to harm that cash flow. So that's the big thing there. And honestly, I think, all the influencers that are like, just buy a business, like, you are retarded and you've never owned a business before. So you should just go raise money from friends and family and go buy a $4 million business and put an SBA loan on it. And you'll just run it because it's easy. And it's just it's a simple service business. So you can't mess it up. And then it's like, I know horror stories of people then losing their house and like these nasty stories. I mean, I had a guy that came to my meetup last week and he was telling me how, him and a partner, because they heard some influencer say it's easy to buy it. I'm not going to say that, anything about the details because I don't want to throw any shame on him because I feel bad for him. But, he bought a service-based business that was doing a couple million a year. So it's like, oh, it should have been good. It was profitable. Didn't do any of the diligence correctly. Never had operated a business like that before and lost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars and are facing a big SBA loan. And the previous owner stole the customers because they didn't put the right things in place. Ooh. So they started just taking the customers to another family member and started the business again and just took their money. So like that happens. And so, it's like, it's not just, just buy it and it cash flows and like, you don't have to do anything. It's right. So like, I'm kind of, I'm bothered by people that just talk about it being so easy. It's like running a business isn't easy. Like it can seem like that when, the TikTokers are going online, like you just get a loan for 90% and then you raise 10% for the down and then you close on it. And then what happens next? That's the question. That's the question that no one answers. So
I could think of a number of examples, which I will not put out there, but yes, I see it all the time, but I love that. Okay. So let's pivot more towards, and again, Cody, like, even though your passion right now is buying businesses, I absolutely see you as being like your scale with pros, right? So your integrator side of things, like the actual, I almost want to say this, to get from 0 to 1, the mindset is not very hard to overcome, but to get from 1 to 10, you actually have to start really improving not only the way you think about business, the way that you look at your operations and your systems and all that kind of stuff. And holy shit, man, if there was analogies out there, like integrator analogies, like, no agenda, no attenda, your perfect day, perfect week, all these things that you teach, that you've taught me, that I partially try to implement. I'll admit I should probably do better. But how can real estate investors think more like business owners when it comes to scaling their operations?
Absolutely. So, when it comes to that, first is like start looking at your business as in a business. Like that's one of the first things. Stop looking at it as this side hustle. And what would an actual business owner do? Well, a business owner is going to actually have a plan. A business owner is going to track their numbers. So I look at every business, and so real estate investors can look at their business this way. I look at it as, well, you have a conveyor belt. You have marketing that needs to occur. Lead opportunities need to come into the business, whether you do direct to seller, whether you do joint, just JV deals with other wholesalers, whether you do direct to agent. Whatever the strategy is that you get leads coming into your business, that needs to be tracked on a weekly basis to look at, okay, what are the leads that are coming in? And then of the lead opportunities that are coming in, then you need to track the sales conversion that's happening. Okay, we get X amount of leads, and then out of those, how many of those turn into a contract? Out of those, which, those deals that go under contract, how many close? So it's just like starting to know your numbers more and tracking the stuff. You could use a simple Google sheet, whatever way you get leads, track that on a weekly basis. However many of those go under contract, track that. However many of those actually close, track that, because we all know not all deals close because of title issues, baby mama drama, whatever's going on in the deal that kills the deal. And then your average deal size. So you're starting to get a pulse on your business and getting a better idea of the data that's actually occurring. So like that's one of the first things is, from lead in the door to conversion to then those deals closing. and then, tracking the company
Yeah,
cash.
yeah.
Like just starting there. Like there's so much to it, but like that's like a starting point, is just starting to know your numbers so you make data-driven decisions versus gut decisions. And I
Yep.
tell people, if you're making gut decisions, like gut is an acronym, GUT, it means you gave up thinking and you're going off your stupid gut that doesn't actually know what the hell's going on.
There it is. Another analogy. I love it. So guys, if you're listening to this and your first time you're hearing what Cody's talking about, this is what we call our most basic KPIs, our key performance indicators within a wholesale operation. And I really want to just touch on this real fast. If there's anything from this episode you take, like I really want you to take this. So what he's talking about is, measuring your numbers. How do we do that? First things first, if you have a CRM that actually allows you to integrate what your bank accounts might be looking like, that makes things a lot easier. But for the sake of argument, you go into your bank account, you look on your credit card statement, and you find everything that you spent money on towards marketing. Okay, that could be your dialer, that can be your virtual assistant, whatever the cost that it took you to generate that lead, you take that number. Then what you find out is how many leads do you generate in a 30-day time frame. So that is your cost per lead. You divide it by that. Okay. So now you've got your cost per lead. Then you want to see how many leads did it take you to get a contract. That is your cost per contract. And as he was saying, some deals fall out, some deals don't happen. We talk about a fallout rate. And if you are closing 100% of your contracts, that means only one thing. It means you're not giving enough offers, you're too conservative, you're only trying to lock up deals that are a guaranteed win, and you're not taking any risks. Now, if you're at 50% success rate, that 50% of your contracts closed, that means that you are too risky. You are taking too many chances on properties that you go, hey, you know what? We're probably not in the numbers that this is going to make profit, but let's just give it a try anyway and see if we can find a buyer. Or you just don't know how to underwrite your deals correctly. You don't have to like analyze what the renovation costs are going to be. So we try to find like a 75% sweet spot, right? So let's say your cost per lead or your cost per contract is $4,000 and you have a 75% conversion rate. That means your actual cost per deal is $5,333. I went over a student with this, so this is fresh in my mind, right? So out of that $5,333, that's what it cost you to close that deal. And now you identify what your profit was or your revenue was on that deal. Then you start to identify what your margins are, your return on ad spends, all that kind of stuff. And you start to really analyze how your business is performing. And if you're getting like a 5X or a 6X or a 10X, holy shit, you're crushing it. But if you're at like a 2X, that should give you warning flags that you might not be able to scale your business at that rate because you've got to pay your acquisitions, your dispositions. If you're going to hire team members, you've got to pay their commissions. And if you're only getting a 2X margin, meaning, it costs you $5,000 for the deal, but you only made $10,000, your deal, your company is going to go underwater. And so that's what he was talking about. And I think that, guys, that's the foundation of understanding the health of a wholesale operation, hands down. So sorry about that, Cody. I just wanted to take a little sidetrack.
No, it's so key. And that's where I like starting there. I mean, that's the way that I help diagnose a business. If I don't know those numbers, like I'll have people that they'll come to me and, tell me at, different events and things and like, oh, this is going on in my business. And I ask them those questions. They're like, I don't know.
I don't
And
know.
so
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I can't help you. And they're like, well, what would you do? And I'm like, I would get my numbers in order and then I would be able to know what to do. It's like your health. Like if you're trying to hit a weight goal, you track your macros and you track, the exercise that you're doing. And then if you're not hitting your weight target, well, you need to maybe either adjust something with your macros or the frequency of exercise, intensity of exercise. It's just those are the things that you have to do in your business as well. And so, that's the math that business owners need to know, and that'll help them scale. And that's where a lot of people don't scale because they don't know any of those numbers. And when you're just throwing mud against the wall, you throw good money, after bad, and like you're just kind of throwing money at stuff and not knowing what's working, what's not working, what to double down on, what to pull back on. And that's a really just fundamental piece of the business. And if for those businesses that have gotten over $1 million a year not doing that, it's like you're leaving a lot of money on the table and a lot of waste if you have gotten past that. And if you're under that, you just implement these foundational pieces so that you're setting yourself up for further success.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Cody was talking about like, measuring your macros, but I see it as more like if you're not even going to step on a scale, how do you know which direction you're going? right? Like
Yeah.
it starts with
Yeah.
that. So like even just
Yeah.
sitting down once a month, right? And that's also like it kind of attests to, Cody having a bookkeeping company is like, that's also what a bookkeeper is there for as well, is to help track what those expenses are, what you're spending money on. And then, again, if you have a CRM, like the CRM we use that I love, it actually, just like QuickBooks, actually integrates into your bank accounts. So using that, I don't know, whatever the integration,
APIs, Zapier, or
yeah,
whatever.
whatever the one is. But like, so you automatically see what your expenses are, and then you can actually tag or, label certain expenses into your marketing, into your operations. And then boom, right there on your main screen is what your cost per lead is, how much your contracts are costing you and stuff. And that is a great way of seeing like a trending scale of like, are you doing better? Are you doing worse? Do you need to make some major pivots? Like for us, if we're running 7 different marketing campaigns, right? Let's say we're running PPC, PPL, cold call, direct mail, all these things. We want to identify which ones are performing best so we can throw more money into it versus cut out the ones that are not performing at all and, kill the loss leaders. And so anyway, so Cody, I want to go back to the beginning, 17 years old. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced while growing from a solo operator to leading multiple teams and companies? Like there was definitely a transition. What were some of the mindsets you had to change and what were the challenges?
I think just the work on like leadership development that I needed to do. You have to become the leader that can operate and that can run, companies. You have to be a leader that can actually lead people. And, people think titles equal leadership when really it's, people choose to follow a leader versus, it's like managers or bosses. I think like in our vernacular within our companies, it's leader and team member. Like when someone says one of my employees, I literally am like, no, you're team member. Team member. We don't call our people
Right.
employees. They're team members and then there's leaders. There's not managers, there's leaders and then there's team members. So like I'm very, very strong on leadership development. And so that was one of the big things. I didn't know how to lead people. I didn't know how to, create incentives that would get people to do the things I wanted them to do. I didn't know, how to, from like a management standpoint, like how do I actually correct bad behavior? How do I hire people the right way? So it really came to, learning how to hire people, learning how to set proper expectations, learning how to create, a success plan for them when they come on into the business so that I could quickly, understand that they're going to make it or quickly understand that they're not going to make it. Implementing things within our companies like mission, vision, core values. Our mission is, hey, this is where we're going as a company. Our vision is what we want to be like. And our core values is how we behave here on the way towards our mission and our vision. And so, people are either opted in or they're out. There's no, you don't get to be here if you're not opted into our core values. And so, but those are things I learned over time. And so it was really a lot on leadership and developing myself. I had to do a ton of work and I still have to because it's a never ending journey. But I had to do a ton of work on myself from becoming a good leader. Because the thing about business is as you grow teams, for those listening, you begin to do less and less of the thing and you begin to do more leading leaders. So I don't do much work of any like thing as far as like delivering on anything within the businesses that I'm involved in. The work that I do is leading leaders. So it's like I meet with leaders and help lead and guide them and coach them on how to better be a leader themselves, how for them to lead their departments and then their departments and their department, it's like within the companies. And so that's what my role has evolved into. But early on, I didn't know. I just thought I'm like, I work hard. So if I hire people, they should just work hard and like they should just hopefully follow the values that I have. And it's like that's not the case. And so you have to create these, these rules of how we behave in the company and those things. So I mean that those are some of the biggest things that I had to really do is work on myself as a leader. And so I can, better guide, direct, mentor, coach our people.
I would say that even for me, I would say that hiring is still, I wouldn't say it's a weakness of mine, but I would say that it's something that I definitely want to still continue to improve because I think that for any real estate investor, anybody that's building out an acquisition business or scaling a business, there's this one stage. It's going to be your first hire where you are the most insecure because you have not scaled an acquisition team yet. So like by trying to promise them that they're going to make X number of dollars. Now, again, if you have your KPIs tracked, right, you know what your average deal size is, you know your revenue and stuff like that, you've got an upper hand going into the hiring process. But let's say you're not strong on your numbers, and let's say your numbers rely on you, right? Like you're the closer and you're about to hire your very first acquisition person, and you can't expect them to be as strong as you on the close. They're not going to structure the creative deals the same way. They're not going to give the same low cash offers and convert that lead as well as you can. And so you come at it with a place of almost imposter syndrome, almost an insecurity of like, do I want to hire a professional closer where now I'm insecure that they're going to see right through me because I'm in the scaling process? Or do you hire other newer investors, newbie investors that want to work for a wholesale operation, and those people are not the right fit? They're not the right culture. Like they're literally trying to start their own investment business, and now you're trying to hire them on as an employee and a team member. And eventually they leave because their goal is not to stick in a company culture and adopt that culture as their own. Their goal is to learn just enough about how to generate a lead, how to cold call, how to lock up a deal. And so that first phase of hiring for me was the hardest to get through because it was this emotional and financial roller coaster that everybody I would hire weren't the right fit. And so then my revenue would go in these huge fluctuations and I would find no consistency, and I would, have to let somebody go. Then I would get back into that seat. Then I would close $100,000 plus in revenue. Then I would try to hire again. And Cody, tell me you experienced something like that at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We all experience it. And, I think the thing that helps is, you know, uh, obviously when people don't have the experience, they're going to make the mistakes. But, I prefer to hire people that actually have experience and that, are a culture fit for the organization, and, understanding enough to know, can this person hit their goals within the company? And I don't, and I think just for everyone listening, you don't need to be the expert in the thing that you're hiring someone to do. Like my CFO, I don't know how to do anything in QuickBooks besides look at the starred stuff that they set up for me in the QuickBooks that I log
Right.
into to look at the things I want to look at. I don't know how to do any of that. I don't know how to do web development. I don't know how the hell any of that stuff works. So I think people have to look at, you just need to be clear on the outcome that you want and coach and guide to the outcome. So it's like if you hire an acquisition rep and the target is, I need this rep to make 80 to 120 outbound calls a day, whatever it is, and they need to have this many conversations and make this many offers a day, you coach and guide them to doing that.
Right.
And you could be in communities like Jeremy's that can then help give guidance on, hey, like, is something, here's my numbers. Like, is my rep just doing terrible? And like, can we listen to a couple of these calls and kind of get some feedback on like, what are they doing wrong? And it's like that's what I lean on when I don't know something. I just create, like, I literally write these documents. I call them, what does success look like? And I literally write out for an area that I don't understand anything about, just what I would want it to be. And I don't care how they figure it out from there, but I'm like, just, this is what winning looks like. This is what success looks like. So like I did that for my web developer, and I gave him a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, these are all the things to me that would mean that success has been achieved within your role. And I'm like, I don't care what softwares you use. I don't care what hosting and this and that and what Zap and API thing you want, but this is what it needs to do for me and the team. And however you do that, that is winning. And if they could do that, bravo. They're doing a good job at their role. So I think just, especially for those that haven't led a role before, just being clear on what the outcomes you want that role to be able to do. And when you don't know what those outcomes should look like, that's where you lean on communities like Jeremy's to get, hey, like, what should the KPIs look like for this role? And then you plug those in. And if they're hitting them, it's like, great job. If they're not, how do we close the gap? How do we coach them up so they can? Yeah. And that's something I found to be helpful.
So something that, guys, I want to touch on is, again, a lot of the listeners in here are, wholesalers that are either newer or they're already scaling and they're in this process right now. When it comes to hiring, this is something that I would recommend is, we talked about, leader and team members, but in between, I feel there needs to be some managerial role, right? There always has to be someone right in between. Without that managerial role, what I find happens with me personally is, let's say I hire somebody and I train them to do acquisitions. Maybe I start them off as a lead manager, junior acquisitions, and they eventually take the seat of being a closer. And then I find out that they're not making the required amount of dials per day, right? They're not calling the X number of leads that I'm requiring them to do. If you don't have a manager, first of all, tracking that and reporting that back to you, that's going to be a slip up, number one. Number two, as the CEO of your business, as the entrepreneur that's running your business, sometimes you go, fuck, do I really want to address this? You know, I'm asking him to make 20 conversations a day and he's only hitting 15. Do I really want to take time out of my day to have a sit down meeting and talk about why they're not hitting their KPIs effectively? And if, let's say, they come at me and say, you know what, I don't think I want to be in this position anymore. You're putting the wool over your eyes, because you're like, I don't want to lose this person, because if I do, it sets me back another 2 months of training to hire somebody else. And so you start to almost compromise with your own expectations, and you go, I'm just going to keep this person in there because I can't deal with the hiring and the firing and the training and all that kind of stuff. But having a managerial position in between the two of you helps with that. That's somebody that, before those dips start to become consistent, it can be addressed very early on, and you can fix the company culture. You can fix the issue with that person. Maybe they're dealing with their girlfriend being crazy or something like that, and you can kind of fix those issues. But I would say for anybody in the position of hiring right now, if you start to negotiate with your own expectations with your employees, it is only going to lead to bad things. Like,
Yep.
Cody, like, can you address that at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the first things is anyone that directly reports to you, you should be having a one-on-one with them weekly, or at least every other week at the longest time frame. And the one-on-one is like an actual structured, let's go through wins, let's go through KPIs, let's go through and, address any gaps that are coming up and coach in those sessions. And so, you know, the and as far as like tracking the numbers, like all of our reps within our companies, they track their numbers. They have to just do an end of day report. And it's like, if they won't do an end of day report, like they're not going to work here. Like I'm not going to chase their numbers down. It needs to go in the end of day report. It takes 1 minute to do when you finish the day. And if they won't do it, I don't want you here. And so that makes the management easier, because it's like all of the numbers from whatever reps go into a spreadsheet that whoever's managing them can then be reviewing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and being able to see trends that are happening and be able to address them as they begin happening. And so absolutely on the same page with the you want someone, and when I say leader, it's like the leader is the manager. It's just I just call our managers leaders.
Sure.
So yeah.
So I mentioned in the beginning of the call, right? Perfect day, perfect week. So what are some financial principles or systems that have helped you like sustainably scale without burning out or losing control?
Sustainable financial systems.
What financial principles or systems have helped you?
Yeah.
I know this is the question that I have written down right now. Here, let's cut this out right now. So Cody, what systems or principles have you kind of like implemented in your business that have helped you sustainably scale without burning out? Like I talked about the perfect day, perfect week. What are some of the gold nuggets you could drop for the listeners of things that you do on a daily or weekly business that helps you scale and keep track of where you're going?
Yeah, so to your comments on that, I mean, I have a YouTube video people could watch on like how that functionally works, but it's just basically a planning process that I do weekly, daily, to help keep me on track and make sure I'm moving things along that matter the most. A lot of people spend a lot of time on things that don't matter. Another thing I found to be helpful is I like to batch my activities. Typically Monday, Tuesdays, I do all my meetings. So I do my one-on-ones, I do our company meetings. All my meetings happen Monday, Tuesdays, so I could do the work that I want to do Wednesday through Fridays. And so obviously not everyone can do that, just wherever stage of business you're in. It's batching your work to be in the mindset of being able to do the work, that same type of work over and over again. Cause I find context switching, for me at least, is kind of hard to go between 5 different types of activities throughout the same day. I feel like I don't do my best work that way. So I found that to be helpful. I mean, on the financial system side, a book by Mike Michalowicz, Profit First, good way to get some basis around managing company cash and making sure that that's being done correctly. Some rough other things that I like to see, just general rules of thumb in any of the businesses, get to 3 to 6 months OpEx expenses and reserves. Some businesses don't need as much. Some maybe need on the higher side to that, but general broad stroke there. And then, having the right operating systems. Another great book, Gino Wickman, Traction, the EOS model. We follow EOS-esque type of a model. We have some of our own things we've created, but then we follow a lot of, meeting cadences from that and the way that we, build our companies. So those are some things that I found to be helpful sustainably over time. And then actually empowering your people and actually building leaders and not being the hero. My goal is to become as irrelevant as possible for every business that I'm involved in. I don't want to be on the org chart. So I always build for that plan of how am I not on the org chart and how do I empower other people? I don't want to be the king. I want to be the king maker and the queen maker. I want everyone else to be the hero. And I just want to be the guy in the back, clapping them on, cheering them on, and helping guide, coach, and mentor them. So a lot of people don't want to do that, won't do that because they have their ego tied up in having to be the hero to solve the problem of the day. I never want to be that. I don't want to do that because I know what freedom, what creates freedom, and freedom comes from building teams that don't rely on you and that can actually become self-managing companies. How does that happen? Processes in place and actual good leaders that you empower to be leaders and to solve problems. Yes, they will make mistakes, but you do too. So welcome to life.
Love that, bro. Okay. So I want to kind of wrap this up. I know that, I wanted to talk about the two things you're focused on the most right now, and I want to give my listeners an opportunity to work with you. So we've got the bookkeeping / soon to be tax service. What is that exactly? Yep. And I'll put the links in the show notes, but talk about that for a second. Then I also want you to talk about Scale with Pros.
Yeah, absolutely. With startvirtual.com, we basically have, a few tiers of service that we do, and we're really focused on bookkeeping. So whether you're an entry-level investor, we can help serve your business from the bookkeeping side. And for people like, oh, well, I only am doing a couple transactions a month, I'm doing it myself. Like, you're dumb if you're doing your own books. Like, just sorry, but you are. Like, you should be doing higher value activities. If you want to earn more, you need to focus on higher value activities. So from entry level to, more advanced, up to people that need a dedicated bookkeeper that literally is working across multiple entities, multiple companies of theirs, we can help with that, just through Start Virtual. Obviously, Jeremy will drop a link. And then as far as, with the work that we do at Scale with Pros, our whole thing is we want to show and help people, create self-managing companies, which is how do you build the right operating systems? How do you have the right leadership systems in place? And the right, hiring and team, systems in place so that you can do that and have companies that can, God forbid, run without you if you go on vacation for a week or a month. And so that's our jam that we like to help people with and show people how to do through Scale with Pros. So
love it, bro. Also, social media handles.
Really just post on Instagram. You won't catch me much anywhere else. I'll just say Cody Barton Official on Instagram, and that's the best place to see me post on my story occasionally and posts, occasionally.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. I got one last question. It's more like a pop quiz question. You ready?
Okay.
What is a common piece of advice that you think new investors should ignore?
Common piece of advice that new investors should ignore. I mean, I don't want to discourage from this, but just just assuming that it's easy because everyone on TikTok says that investing is easy, whether it's investing in businesses, investing in real estate, it's hard and it takes time and it takes reps and you suck at it when you start. I did too. We all did. Jeremy did. We all did. We didn't know something and then eventually we knew something, and that's how we learn, right? So, you can accelerate the learning curve being in communities like Jeremy's, and you can accelerate your learning curve by getting around and building relationships with people that have done what you want to do. But don't get the notion that it should be easy and that you should just do a deal to do a deal. There's a lot of people that do that. They do these marginal deals to put deals on the board, but they just you really shouldn't do that. So
I love that.
It is hard, but it's a worthy venture to go down.
Love it, bro. Awesome. All right, guys, you've been listening to the Investor Semester podcast. Do not forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and feel free to share this episode with your friends if you got any value. We'll see you on the next episode, but until then, keep grinding, keep making offers, and for God's sake, please call your leads. We'll see you next time.